Welcome to Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean and special guest Garrett, who's a buddy of mine that works at the same fire department, Salinas Fire Department. What we're going to do today is we're going to show you how to install a Gobi roof rack on a 5th gen 4runner. Garrett has a 2016 4runner. I'm now going to turn it over to Garrett and he's going to explain why he chose to go with the roof rack and why he decided to choose Gobi as the manufacturer of the roof rack he purchased.
So the reason why I needed a roof rack for myself and my wife with the 4runner was for a couple reasons. We have 2 Australian Shepherd dogs, so when they go in the back, they get the back. And in the middle seat, we have a 45-liter cooler, our camp kitchen, firewood, and gear. So for 2 people, the car's already full. And with our family growing soon and the needs that we have and the toys we want to bring on trips, it was a good reason to get the roof rack. So we can put the luggage, the firewood, the toys on top, so we can carry the dogs inside the car, not dogs on top of the car. So when we get to our destination, our luggage is on top safely and all the things inside that we carry are safe as well. So the reason why I chose the Gobi roof rack for my 5th gen 4runner was for a couple of reasons. The price point, obviously Gobi is a little expensive, but there's a couple things that you get with Gobi that you do not get with other brands. 1, with Gobi, you get free shipping. 2, you get 2 crossbars. 3, you get a free ladder that you install on the hatch. And for myself and Timmy, for the fire service, and I think for other first responders and military, if you disclose that information when ordering through Gobi, they will give you 1 free accessory. So if you call Gobi and ask around, you might get a free accessory to add to your order. So for that price, I compared to other companies that had roof racks, but Gobi was the style of rack that I wanted for my 4runner. So with other racks for 4runners, you have different style racks, for example, front runner, where everything is more modular when you mount things to your rack. Compared to Gobi with the cage mesh on the bottom and the crossbars on the side, for the application that I want to use for my 4runner, I went with Gobi because 1, I'm going to use it for kayaks. 2, I want to throw firewood up there and strap it down nice and quick. 3, I'd like to throw luggage. So for me and my wife traveling, the Gobi roof rack with the aesthetics of how it looks, with the ladder, with the shipping right to my house, with that price point and not being impatient, because with Gobi there is a long wait, I was comfortable enough to order the Gobi roof rack, let Timmy the Toolman know in time, and we planned out to do this video install today for you.
The way that it comes shipped to your house is depending on, I guess, the shipping supplier that's available in your area. The big package that's on a pallet came in a box van, and then they lowered it to a ground with a hydraulic lift, and then they used a series of furniture dollies to get it into his garage. It's a big package. We're going to show you how they packaged it, and then we're going to show you us unboxing the whole thing and getting all the parts out for you to see. Here's the Gobi rack in all its packaging inside Garrett's garage. We're going to unpackage this thing right now and then show you all the parts that came with it. All right, we finally got it all unpackaged. I have to give Gobi 2 thumbs up for their packaging. They did a really nice job packaging everything up so it wouldn't get damaged in shipping. Everything was wrapped really well with cardboard and plastic wrap and taped up really nicely. You can see the rack here. You can see the ladder we're going to install. They provide really good instructions to follow. This is going to be the instructions for the ladder. These are the 2 brackets that affix the ladder to the rear hatch. And then here's the hardware kit. Here's all the hardware and fasteners that attach the rack to the vehicle. They actually label the bags number 3 and number 4. So they let you know what hardware is for what application. And then they have the written instructions to get the rack on the vehicle. And then you have the wind fairing. It has its bag of hardware and its own set of instructions. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to work on getting these brackets affixed to the top of the roof. And first we have to remove the factory roof rails, and we'll start by showing that. The directions clearly state don't pry against the body and basically damage the roof. We have to get these factory roof rails off. And so what they're saying is you don't take a tool and lever it against the body and dent it. And then they give a caution, use anti-seize lubricant on all screws. To start off with, we're going to remove these plastic covers to expose the bolts so we can remove the factory roof rails. What I have here is a trim removal tool set that I bought via Amazon. It's a nice handy tool to remove interior plastic panels, and I'm going to utilize one of these tools because it's pretty slim to get in between the plastic and this rubber mount to where I can pull this cap up. So if you don't have something like this, maybe you can use whatever at your disposal, maybe like a plastic tire lever for like bicycles. The main thing is you don't want to damage your paint or dent it. So you don't want to lever against this and make any marks on your paint. If you were going to choose to lever against this, then I would put a heavy rag or something here to where you're not going to damage your paint. So I'm just going to slide this in underneath the plastic, get it up underneath here, and I'm going to pull up. And when you jettison the plastic cap off the vehicle, you know you succeeded. So there's one. On the first one, we pulled straight up and the cap went flying like you saw. This one, we're using a rag in between one tool to get a gap. Then I'm going to use a little bit thicker tool and see if we can actually take this off with a little bit more control. That was better. If you can do that where you can get one started, protect your paint with the rag underneath the first tool, and then get the other one underneath there and pry up with a little more control, that seemed to work pretty good. Once the plastic caps are off, it exposes two 12mm bolts, and you have to remove the bolts on all four corners. And looking at the way this is set up, it's pretty well thought out. They have a rubber coated washer and they use a little bit of Loctite. That's why it was a little bit hard to get out. Obviously the rubber coated washer is to make it waterproof, and this is a plastic piece right here, so it makes a watertight seal. So we're going to do that with the other three corners. So once you get the bolts out that are holding the roof rail on the back side and on the front side, you could just pick this thing up and carry it off. Here's what it looks like with the OEM roof rails removed. You got these two plastic sleeves exposed, and then you could obviously see there's some dirt built up. So what Garrett's going to do is he's going to clean up the area really good where the Gobi roof brackets are going to go. All right, we're on page 5 of the instruction manual. So at the top of the page, it talks about cleaning up all the areas that the brackets are going to go. All these parts right here that they're showing are all from bag number 3. You have these rubber pads, these nylon spacers, and all these parts. You have this skinny rubber pad. Next, you put a couple nylon spacers, followed by a wider rubber pad, followed by this metal piece that has 2 rubber pads connected to it, followed by another rubber pad, which is the same as the first rubber pad. And then you put your bracket on, and then you have 2 bolts. And you put a lock washer on first, followed by the washer that has the rubber bottom to it. And then they provide you an Allen wrench if you don't happen to have an Allen wrench in your tool arsenal. You get a total of 8 of the skinny rubber pads. You get 8 nylon washers. You get 4 of the wider rubber pads, and then you get 4 of these metal brackets with the rubber pads. And then you get a total of 8 bolts. Garrett and I watched a video of a guy who did an install on a 5th gen 4runner for a Gobi rack, and he really went to town using a whole bunch of silicone between every layer of all the parts. Maybe that was a little bit overkill, but we are seeing that there's a little bit of a gap in between this plastic sleeve on the body, and this might potentially be a pathway of water to get into the headliner. We're going to clean this up with some denatured alcohol, and then we're going to put a bead of silicone around these plastic sleeves to where it will just be more insurance for a watertight seal. And he's just using a microfiber towel and he's going to clean up that area really good so the silicone will stick around those plastic sleeves really well. So I just got some clear RTV silicone. I bought it via Amazon. I'll put a link in the video description if you want to buy a big old giant can like I got, but you really don't need a lot of this. It has like a little actuator that it comes shooting out, so I'm going to put a bead around these plastic sleeves. Ooh, it comes out with a lot of force there. That's a lot there. A little silicone, not as much as I'm getting with this thing. It's a little bit powerful the way it ejects. So we got a little silicone around the plastic sleeves. Now we're going to get this first skinny rubber gasket in place. Stretch it over the two holes. We have a little bit of extra silicone squeezing out, so just going to wipe that off. The next thing it says is you get your two plastic nylon spacers. Then you get the wider of the two. These holes are offset. They're closer to one side than the other. You get the holes closer to the outside of the vehicle, like here, so the rubber pad is going to actually be onto the roof right here, protecting it. So you put that one on next. Then you put this metal bar with the rubber pads underneath it. You put that on next. Then you follow that up with another one of the skinny gaskets. And then now you get the Gobi bracket, and they do you a favor and they say this side up, so you can't mix it up. So then you have this bracket facing inboard, and then like the instructions say, they suggest getting a little bit of anti-seize onto the threads of each fastener. So you squeeze a little bit out. That's a lot. Smooth it out with your finger. Hopefully this isn't cancer causing. Probably you want to use some gloves with this, I would say, but just you got more dexterity without these gloves on. And then you just slide it on in. And you get it started, then you can get your other one started. Now you either use the 5mm Allen that they provided you, or you use one you have. I have a set of socket Allen, so I'm just gonna screw this in with my hand first and then transition to the ratchet. The instructions say to not tighten them down all the way, so you leave a little room for adjustment when you get the roof rack up onto the top of the vehicle. Just cinch them down most of the way, but leave a little bit of play. All right, we have all four brackets affixed to the roof. Now we're gonna carry the roof rack and set it up onto the vehicle. So I have a moving blanket on the back of his rig, so if we have to adjust, we'll be able to rest it there, readjust, and then get it the rest of the way on top of the vehicle. So let's see how this goes. Okay, I've got it here. Go ahead and reposition where I'm at. So right now I'm stepping on his rock rails with one foot on the tire, and then he's on the other side, and well, we're gonna see if we can shimmy this in position. Just get on the tire and we could move it forward. So that worked out okay. It looks like if you set it on the back and then maybe we both stand on the tire, then you could move it the rest of the way in position. We got it to here. Now we're gonna transition a little bit more forward, then we're gonna slide it forward some more. We have it lined up. Now we're just gonna get this moving blanket out of our way. Drop that. And there it is. It's up on the roof. This thing is pretty heavy. There's no way you're gonna do it by yourself unless you're like Hulk Hogan or the Incredible Hulk or Timmy the Toolman. Just kidding. I think actually if you had a third person, it would be better. If you had two on the sides and one in the rear, then you could probably do it much easier. Utilize all the friends you can get to do this because it just makes it easier. The next thing we have to do is we have to get some rubber pads in between the bracket and the rack. These rubber pads and the bolts that affix the rack to the roof are in bag number 4. So you just lift up the rack a little bit and slip one of the pads in between. Then you grab one of the supplied bolts and you put a flat washer. You come in from the top, drop it in, and then on the bottom side, you use one of the nylon nut and another flat washer underneath. We're gonna do the same on all the brackets. We're just gonna get them in really loose, make sure we get all the bolts started, and then we're gonna start cinching everything down. We have all the bolts started for the 4 mounts, the rear one, and this one sort of in the middle near the B pillar of the vehicle. Now we're gonna do the same with the very front mounts. So here's one of the front mounts, and it actually says on there which side it goes to. It says front, driver side, and it's the same procedure. We're gonna get a rubber pad in between the bracket and the roof rack, and then we're gonna get another of the 2 bolts with the washer underneath the bolt head, and then a washer with the nut, and get these affixed to the vehicle. So Garrett has another one of the supplied rubber pads, and he's gonna put that in between the front bracket and the roof rack. Now Garrett's just getting another one of the supplied bolt and washers on the top. Then he's going to put a washer and nut on the bottom of each bolt. The directions say you want the foot of the front mount lined up with the black strip on the roof. The next step is we have to tighten up the bolts and the nut that attach the front brackets to the roof rack. And then we have to make an adjustment for the front mounts to where the distance between the roof and the roof rack rail is 3 1/4 inches. To get those adjusted correctly, we have to loosen up these 2 middle bolts and then make the adjustment. So I'm going to tighten up the front bracket mounts using a 9/16 socket with a medium length 3/8 drive. Then I have a box end 19/16 wrench on the backside. The measurement they're showing is from the roof to the bottom of the roof rack, and that's supposed to be 3 1/4 inches. So the way you make the adjustment for these front mounts is you have to loosen the nuts on the backside of these middle bolts. We found that it's a little tight to get a tool in there. You can do it with a ratchet or a box end or open end wrench. We're deciding to put a towel on the roof to protect the paint while we're getting these nuts loose so we can make the height adjustment on the front mounts. Now what we have to do is we have to tighten up all these 5mm bolts. Then we're going to tighten up the bolt and the nuts that attach the roof brackets to the roof rack. You want to make sure that you have enough clearance between the roof antenna and the back of the roof rack. So just pay attention to that. You just need a little bit of a gap, and just make sure that it's not rubbing up against the antenna when you do your final tightening of all the bolts. All right, we're all done attaching the roof rack to the roof of the vehicle. The next thing we have to do is now we're going to get the supplied ladder attached to the rear hatch. Now we're following the instructions for the ladder, and it shows that we need to measure from this black trim to the edge of the upper bracket 3 3/8 inches. Here's the piece that they're talking about measuring from, and then we got to measure out 3 3/8 inches and then put our bracket on. That's right around 3 3/8 inches. And then now I'm going to put a piece of painter's tape right here to mark that location. So now this piece of painter's tape is marking the edge of the bracket at 3 3/8 inches from the black strip on the top of the roof. So once you have that edge marked, make sure that the bracket's pulled this direction firmly against the edge of the lift gate, and then we're going to put another piece of tape here just to help hold it in position. And I'm going to do one more piece right over here on this side to make sure that the bracket's going to stay where we want it. The next thing that the directions say, once you have the upper bracket kind of marked with the tape and held in place with the tape, we're going to get it and we're going to slide it over the studs here. By going with the level, you have to also be starting off on level ground. The truck is a little bit slanted, so we're just going to ditch the level and we're just going to use a visual. Garrett's looking from behind me and he says that looks pretty good. So I'm going to use a couple pieces of tape here to mark where the bracket should line up, and it looks good. The reason for this is that before you take off the sticky tape and put it in place, you want to make sure that you know exactly where to put it. So here's a few things that we're noting just by eyeballing it. The passenger side part of this ladder basically comes right along the edge of the 4 and the 4runner. It also is sitting nice and square where it's sitting flat against the hatch here. And then on the top of the roof, you'll notice that this hole on the passenger side is pretty much centered on the bracket. And then this one is pretty much all the way to the top edge of the bracket. So that's the way it's liking to sit, where everything is looking square and straight for us. So once you have all your tape marks and the ladder looks good to you, you can remove the ladder. Now we're gonna remove the bracket. We're gonna clean up the surface underneath with some denatured alcohol, and then we're gonna take off the glue strips and affix the bracket to the vehicle. I went ahead and put a second piece of tape on the other side of the bracket so Garrett knows the area he needs to clean with the alcohol. So now you have all these adhesive strips, and so Garrett's gonna remove all the backings and then he's gonna put it in place. Even with the hatch closed, you can slide this into position and make sure you're pulling tight up against the door here, and you're supposed to hold down for 30 seconds. So now we're going to do the same with the lower part of the liftgate. Garrett is cleaning this side up with denatured alcohol because the lower part of the ladder is going to glue on here. Then there's another little strip that's going to go right behind here, and it also has a glue strip, so we have to clean this underside too with denatured alcohol. So Garrett is just removing the adhesive backing for the little metal strip that goes on the inside of the liftgate, and then we just test fitted it with the bracket. It looks like you want to bring the edge of this piece right to the edge of the hatch. The next step now is we're going to rehang the ladder. He's going to remove this adhesive strip on the bottom of the ladder. And then now we're going to rehang it on the top. Using an extra set of hands, I'm actually going to stop filming here so we can get this right. But I'm going to pull down on the ladder while he pushes it up against the liftgate. So we want the bottom edge of the ladder equal to the bottom ledge of the liftgate. Line up your painter's tape with the rack, and then you'll know it's going to look good when it's all bolted up. So we got it glued on to the bottom here. Now we're going to get the bottom bracket hooked underneath and that one attached. We tightened up the supplied Allen head bolts. They are 3/16 head, and you have a lock washer and a flat washer that you use, and then you just get them tight, and they actually provide 3/16 Allen for you. Now on the back side, we have to use an 1/8 inch Allen to tighten the set screw up against the little plate on the side to lock it in place, and then we have to tighten the set nut to where this adjustment screw can't come loose. So I have an 1/8 inch Allen socket, and I'm tightening the screw against the plate on the underside here. And you just get it snug, and that's good. Now we have to lock down these nuts. This nut is a 7/16, so we're just going to give it a little bit of a turn. We can't really get a socket in here because of how close the bracket is to the nut. So you just want to give it a little bit of a turn to lock it in place. That's all you need to do. And they're both set, so now these studs can't come loose on you. Now with the bottom securely attached to the liftgate, we're going to get the top hardware on. So you start with the flat washer on both sides, followed by a lock washer, followed by a 1/2 inch nut. And then just cinch these down nice and snug. The final thing is there's a couple 5/32 Allen head bolts. They go here. The instructions maybe forgot about these, but they're just a little set screw, I guess, to help hold the upper bracket in place so it can't potentially slide backwards. It's just going up right up against the lift hatch itself. How tight do you get these? Well, I guess you just kind of snug them up gently, because it's going right into the paint. They don't have any type of protective pad that they mentioned putting behind here. I'm just gonna lightly turn these against the paint, really just barely snug, and call it good. We finally got the ladder in place. Now Garrett's gonna climb up on it and see how well it works.
Top of the world, Ma.
The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get the wind deflector on. He's gonna clean up the surface here right above the windshield on the roof with some denatured alcohol. We're gonna get the brackets attached to the wind deflector. So you take one of your Allen head bolts, you use one of the plastic washers, and then you put the bracket on the back side, slide the bolt through, and then on the back side you put another washer, then one of the nylon lock nuts. And then the instructions say that you want to get the brackets tightened up to where the bend of the bracket is 3/4 of an inch above the top of the wind deflector. Measure 3/4 of an inch from this edge to the bend and then lock it in place. We ran into a problem with the hardware for the windshield. The nylon nuts that go with the bolts, for some reason when we went to tighten them up, they just got super tight, and we ended up stripping out the heads of the Allen head. When we were taking them off, we had to actually use a vice grips, and the freaking bolt broke. You can see how it sheared off. Something is up with the supplied nylon lock nuts. We don't know what, but we went to the hardware store and we just got some different nylon lock nuts and a couple bolts for the ones we ended up breaking getting the things off. We got the brackets on to where the distance from here to the bend is about 3/4 of an inch. We snugged them up, and then now we're gonna get this onto the vehicle. We have the wind deflector on the vehicle, and the instructions say to get the middle one bolted up first. So he's gonna use one of the supplied bolts with 2 plastic washers and a nylon lock nut. The directions say to have this middle bracket fully slid forward towards the front of the vehicle, so you want it maxed out. And then he's just gonna snug it up. We're gonna get the driver's side attached. So same thing, you have your nylon washer with the bolt going through the top, and then you have another nylon washer with the nylon lock nut on the bottom. You want to get the outer bolt nut snugged up pretty tight, and then the instructions say to bend the wind deflector towards the rack, and you want an 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch gap between the edge of the wind deflector and the bar of the roof rack. We now have the wind deflector attached to the roof rack, and we have the same amount of gap on both edges, about 1/4 inch gap on both edges. And then now what we have to do is we have to mark a 1/2 inch outward. So we're gonna put a length of masking tape all the way down the front edge, a 1/2 inch away from here, to give us a guideline when we put the clear plastic protector underneath this wind deflector. We have a piece of painter's tape that's a 1/2 inch away from the wind deflector, and then you're supposed to measure 1 inch from the edge of the roof here inboard, and this tape is 1 inch wide. So now we have a grid of where we need to place the clear plastic coating that's going to go underneath the wind fairing. Now we have to remove the wind deflector off the vehicle so we can clean underneath and then attach that piece of plastic to protect against this thing rubbing on it. We have the wind deflector out of the way. Now Garrett's slowly affixing the clear plastic protector, peeling away the white backing a little at a time and trying to get all the air bubbles out. We're just going to work down the whole length of the front of the roof and get this plastic protector in place. Here's a good visual how we're doing it. It's nice to have a buddy, so I'm actually pulling the white tape while he's smoothing it out and getting all the bubbles out. And then I pull a little bit more of the white tape, and then he's just going to keep on smoothing it out, and we're following our painter's tape line just like that. We have the wind deflector on. Now let's see what the final result looks like. Shot from the front. Coming along the driver's side. From the rear. He's got the ladder there and a doggy. And then the passenger side, same thing. Here's what it looks like looking from the back towards the front. You've got these movable crossbars that you can move to where you like. It looks like it's a pretty well-made rack. All right, we're done with this job. We showed you how to get a Gobi Stealth Roof Rack onto a 5th Gen 4runner. Gobi does offer some additional things that you can look on their website, like if you have a newer 5th Gen and you have a moonroof or sunroof, they have a removable insert version of the same roof rack. And then there's other accessories you can buy from them. What we found is that Gobi provides really good instructions, well written, with pictures to go along with it. And that goes a long ways for do-it-yourselfers getting this type of stuff done. There was very little guesswork. We ran into one little snag, and that was the hardware to secure the wind deflector onto the roof rack. For whatever reason, those nylon lock nuts got on there so tight to where we couldn't tighten them anymore. We actually broke 2 of the bolts getting them disassembled because we couldn't get them all the way tight. So we went to an Ace Hardware and we bought some other fasteners and we finished the job. So other than that, it was pretty straightforward installation, and I would have to give Gobi 2 thumbs up on their workmanship and the instructions and everything about their product.
So I'm very happy and pleased with the install of the Gobi Stealth Rack for my 5th gen 4runner. Quick things to mention was one of the reasons we did get the roof rack here for me was that there was no drilling required. The instructions provided through Gobi and all the tools mostly were required, but we did use all the tools from Timmy the Toolman. So up next for the 4runner, we're going to be doing another install soon. Once again, I'm very happy and pleased to do all my installs through Timmy the Toolman and Sean, and hope to see you guys next time.
So with all that said, we thank you for watching Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean and special guest Garrett. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, do that below. Take care. Bye-bye. Peace out. Sick months. Sick months.